I'm Fentrice Driskell, and I have the honor of serving as the Democratic leader of the Florida House of Representatives. This past several years, we've seen unprecedented assaults on our communities. There are many politicians in Tallahassee, our very colleagues, who have spent more time seeking higher office than considering the real problems that Floridians face. Now, all the while, the folks in charge in Tallahassee have made it increasingly difficult for Floridians to make their voices heard. We've witnessed not only just the passing of restrictive laws and regulations, but also the weaponizing of procedures, the packing of committee agendas, and the limiting of public testimony. All of this, make no mistake, all of this was designed to suppress the voices of constituents impacted by dangerous political decisions. I knew, and my caucus knew, that this could not stand, that this could not be the new normal. So we find ourselves here tonight, convening our inaugural summer field hearings. We are bringing the legislature to the people. This week, you see that we're convening here in Tampa Bay, where we all have the pleasure of serving in our communities. We'll also convene at a community center in Orlando and at a Pride Center in Fort Lauderdale to hear from the folks that those in power in Tallahassee have tried so hard, so desperately to silence. Florida House Democrats believe that every Floridian deserves the freedom to be healthy, prosperous, and safe. Inspired by your stories here today, we will continue to work towards that future. Thank you for being here tonight to stand up for what you believe in and to help make truly Florida as free a state as it possibly can be. Thank you for continuing to try to make a difference for your communities. Truly, we are so glad that you were here. Before we begin, a little level setting. This hearing will be conducted like a traditional committee meeting, so excuse the formality. The only difference is that we won't unreasonably limit your time to prevent you from speaking at all. We will recognize speakers and ask them to come to the podium to offer their remarks. To ensure everyone is afforded the opportunity to speak, we ask that you keep your remarks as concise as possible. Probably 3 to 5 minutes should do it. We only have the room for so long, y'all. So on that front, we've developed innovations to ensure that every story is heard. Now, I'm a big believer in stories. And our theory of the case is that if we can start sharing our stories, we'll start to realize we have much more in common than not. Because property insurance rates don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. And the last time I checked, you can't eat a book ban. So what we need to do is get a little more vulnerable and share our stories, because whether we're here in Tampa Bay or up in the Panhandle or down in the Florida Keys, these policies have been impacting us all. And I know that over the past several years, our stories have been suppressed. But on your way in, you passed story collection booths. If you aren't comfortable speaking in public, but still want to share your story, or if you have already heard a comment in testimony today, or that somebody says something that was similar to what you want to say, that what you were going to say, but you still want to make your voice heard, you could also see a staff member and have your story recorded. And even if you do feel comfortable speaking up in public today, we would love to record your story. I think it's essential to good lawmaking for us to understand what the people want, what the people need, and how these policies have been impacting you. You'll also notice that we have QR codes set up. You can scan the QR code to upload your video on your own time if today doesn't work for you, or if time at the venue tonight runs out before we can get to everyone. We truly want to make sure that no story goes untold or unheard. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge my colleagues who are also giving up of their time and have them introduce themselves. We will start to my right, your left, with Representative Michele Rayner.
Right now, everywhere I go, if I get a hand clap. For those of y'all who do not know me, my name is Michele Rayner. I go by the pronoun she, they, and tired, because I'm very tired. And I represent parts of St. Petersburg and Hillsborough County, including Tampa, Riverview, Gibsonton, and Brandon. I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to be able to hear your stories. I serve as ranking member on State Affairs, also as ranking member on Criminal Justice and on Ways and Means, and I can't think of the other one right now, Health, Innovation, and something else, and something else. I mean, yeah. And so, but the committees I just named always have intersections of the really bad bills that come, and we always have well-meaning chairs that say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, guys. You know, we really want to hear your voice, but yet somehow we don't hear your voices." So I am really glad that the House Caucus, Leader Driskell and her leadership, really had this vision to set this forth to make sure that the people's house is brought to the people and that you are able to tell us your stories. And not only will you tell us your stories, you see all of us have pen and pencils up here because we're also not just listening for the sake of listening, but writing down and making sure that we can make actual real change for y'all. So thank you so much for being here. I'm gonna pass the mic.
Good afternoon. I am State Representative Dianne Hart, and I represent House District 63, which includes Ybor, Tampa Heights, Seminole, parts of downtown, parts of West Tampa. I go north up to Fletcher, and I go east of past Temple Terrace, right over the 301. And indeed, it is a pleasure to be here tonight because I sit on some very difficult committees. You all might know that I spent 6 years on criminal justice. But I also sit on water quality, where I am the ranking member. I thought all you did with water was drink it when I got there. But I have learned so much more about how critically important our water is and the quality of our water, and I find that we've got to step up. And you all come to Tallahassee and talk to us, all of us, and you're not being heard by the time the vote is taken. So you all understand. I sit on Ways and Means, and I'm on health care, because I know that all of that is critically important. So I just want to thank you all for being here tonight. I am prepared to write down things that I think that we'll be able to utilize when we get back to Tallahassee.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am State Representative Lindsay Cross from District 60, and I represent portions of St. Petersburg, Pinellas Park, and unincorporated Lillman area. It's really an honor to be here with all of you this evening. Thank you for taking the time to be here. I sit on 6 committees up in Tallahassee: Health and Human Services, Constitutional Rights, Post-Secondary Education and Workforce. I'm on 2 appropriations committees: Higher Education Appropriations, Natural Resource Appropriations, and the Water Quality Supply and Treatment Subcommittee. I'm a practicing environmental scientist here in the Tampa Bay area, and so I focus a lot on improving our water quality, our public health here in the area, making sure that we're addressing flooding and resiliency issues, also areas around affordability for homes, for renters, and for home insurance. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Susan Valdés, serving as your state representative in District 64, which encompasses Town and Country, part of Plantation, part of Carrollwood, a little sliver of West Chase, Carver City, Lincoln Garden, West Tampa, Wellswood. So 2 good corners for you to think about is that kind of sort of encompasses the district is how many of you know where International Mall is? That's one corner. How many of you know where Citrus Park Mall is? That's another corner. And then all the way to Florida Avenue over the river. So anyways, thank you very much. I appreciate having this opportunity to really have this one-on-one with you all, and I'm so impressed with the crowd today. Thank you for coming out. It means so much because, working in Tallahassee, I don't know about you guys, but I think that we sometimes feel so disconnected because we spend so much time up in Tallahassee in that bubble, but we definitely don't forget where we come from, for sure. So a little bit about myself. I too this is our junior year. We just ended our junior year, and in these last 6 years, oh my God, we could write a novel or 2 or 3 with different volumes, because you can't make this ish up, right? So I proudly serve as the ranking member on Justice Appropriations Subcommittee, as well as the Education Choice and Innovation Committee as your ranking member. And it's been a ride. So we're ready. We're ready to hear your stories.
My name is Amy Reed. I'm a professor of French and director of the Gender Studies program at New College of Florida. 14 months ago, following a well-publicized hostile takeover of New College, I was elected chair of the faculty and our faculty representative on the Board of Trustees. I stood for election so that I could speak up for my colleagues, New College faculty, students, and staff, many of whom are unable to speak out because of fear of retribution. That is why I have come to speak with you here today. 29 years ago, in July of 1995, I drove to Florida for my dream job, teaching French language, literature, and gender studies at New College, one of the country's best public liberal arts honors colleges. I was excited about the opportunity to work closely with and mentor students who are not just excited about learning, but eager to forge their own educational pathway, to join a faculty committed to the project of public education of the highest caliber. That's a commitment that requires academic freedom for both teachers and students. New College has been a wonderful place to build a career. Florida is where I chose to settle and to raise my kids, two of whom are currently enrolled at universities in the Florida SUS. Sadly, the New College that brought me to Florida is no longer. While the situation at New College is unique, reflecting our small size, our mission as a residential honors college, and years of inadequate funding since the legislature severed us from USF in 2001, the most devastating challenges we face are shared by our fellow SUS institutions. Legislation passed in Florida, from HB 233, the Viewpoint Protection Bill, in 2021, to Stop Woke and Don't Say Gay in 2022, and the slew of bills in 2023 that included HB 1521, or the trans bathroom ban, and Senate Bill 266, which bans funding for DEI, guts tenure protections, and places multiple restrictions on curricula statewide. All of this has succeeded in creating a chilling environment on our campuses, limiting what students can say, what faculty can teach, making it hard to recruit excellent faculty and students, and driving away many dedicated faculty from the state. In a video posted last fall, one of the out-of-state members of our NCF BOT described their intent to, quote, rebalance the hormones in politics on campus. Well, I dispute the charge that our faculty was a locus of left-wing indoctrination. The new BOT has succeeded in decimating our faculty and our student body, driving away people of color, members of the LGBTQ community, and women. Between spring and fall 2023, our student retention plummeted. The number of students who left the school, there's always some students who do every year, but it doubled from 13% in 2022 to 27% in 2023. Today, and at your hearings in Orlando and Miami, you'll hear from New College students about their experiences on a hostile campus. As for faculty, last May, the two colleagues with whom I have worked most closely for 28 years both left New College in Florida, one for another university in the Midwest, another to teach at a private high school. They were part of an unprecedented wave of faculty departures. Between retirements, resignations, and leaves, about a third of our faculty left last spring and summer. Last August, after the BOT voted to abolish the gender studies program, of which I am still nominally the director, a junior colleague I had helped to recruit, our first and only tenure track hire in gender studies, quit. Nick Clarkson's resignation letter, which was published in Ms. Magazine, made clear the reasons why he, a dedicated and successful teacher mentor, was leaving. Quote, Florida is the state where learning goes to die. This year, the pace of faculty departures at NCF continues. Of the 6 faculty who were awarded tenure this year, after their tenure cases had been deferred the previous year, only 3 will be returning to New College in the fall. 3 have left for other universities outside of Florida, and at least another 8 tenured or tenure track faculty are retiring or taking other positions. Understand, that is another 15% of our faculty. Last December, the AAUP released a scathing report on the state of education in Florida, which opened with a quote from a faculty member from FAMU, Leroy Brunel, who said, quote, what we are witnessing in Florida is an intellectual reign of terror, end of quote. I call on you to stand up against this, to push back on legislative initiatives that curb academic freedom and chill free speech on our campuses, to stand up for our faculty and our students, which is to say, for Florida's future. Florida had reason to be proud of the quality of our state SUS, ranked first in the nation for several years, and of New College in particular. You came here to listen, and I hope you can move your colleagues to act. Thank you.
We'll hear from Sonia Howman. Sonia, are you here?
One of my children started his education at New College. He went to New College specifically because of the incredible faculty, the small professor-to-student ratio, and the unprecedented academic freedom. But it was more than that. It was a tiny bastion of safety in an increasingly hostile Florida. Because my son is biracial and transgender. Not a safe place to be. When he first came out, I was confused as a person of my generation might be, but I was a physician and a scientist who follows the science. I did all the research I could. I talked to my colleagues who specialized in pediatrics and endocrinology. I met with experts, I prayed, I talked to my kid, and we supported him any way we could. He started New College in 2022, and that first semester changed his life. He went from a very scared, bored, smart kid to a kid who couldn't wait to go to class. He was voracious in his learning. He was so happy to meet with these students. Our family was so grateful. But then, on January 6, 2022, our governor announced that he wanted to make New College into a Hillsdale of the South. For those of you who don't know, it's a private school in Michigan that doesn't accept any federal funding, so it doesn't have to follow the federal laws. DeSantis appointed 7 new trustees, including Matthew Spalding of Hillsdale College, Christopher Rufo, a propagandist who rails against DEI, CRT, and is an outspoken anti-LGBT activist, and Ryan Anderson, who authored an anti-transgender book that was so vile it was removed from Amazon. Although the professors, staff, and students, the parents tried to raise awareness and protest, things just continued to get worse and worse. The gender-neutral bathroom signs were removed. Visiting students were asked to prove their gender at a public restroom. It was clear that DeSantis' hostile takeover created a very hostile learning environment at New College for LGBT students. And then came the trumped-up charges and the violations for the student who spoke out in this free Florida. Ostensibly, still part of America, right? We still have the First Amendment, right? But not there. My son left Florida. He attends school 1,300 miles away, but the takeover of New College left its mark. Our family used to go to bed at night, blissfully unaware of the fact that our governor of our state was going to overthrow our kids' college and treat him as if he were a second-class citizen, and worse yet, a damn criminal. So much for the free state of Florida. And now as a physician, I would be remiss if I didn't start talking about the 6-week abortion ban. I got 2 daughters of childbearing age. America is already the most unsafe place to give birth among developed countries, and it is much worse for people of color. Florida's draconian restrictions on abortion will exacerbate this. For those who use the internet as their primary source of medical education, let me be clear as a physician. You ready? No, ectopic or tubal pregnancies can't be reimplanted. A woman's body does not have the ability to get rid of a pregnancy from rape or incest. And despite what our governor said, there is no such thing as abortion after birth. Yes, a woman can bleed to death or die from sepsis before you can get 2 attending physicians to agree her life is in imminent danger, as our ridiculous law requires. And I'm here to tell you, as a former ER doctor, it's hard to get attending physicians to agree on anything. I know this firsthand. When I was pregnant with my last child, my doctor told me to terminate that pregnancy because the risk of my life was too great. I was a 36-year-old academic physician. I fully understood those risks. And I made my choice to continue that pregnancy, but she was right. I had a life-threatening hemorrhage, but because I happened to be in the hospital at the time, they were able to save me and my child. We spent weeks in the hospital. I lost my ability to bear more children and continue to have health problems to this day, but that was my choice. Can you imagine in this free Florida, forced to carry an unwanted child despite a grave risk to your life, a teenager? How about somebody who's a victim of rape or incest? How about you? How about your wife? Is that free? Should women be forced to give birth to a child with no chance of survival, stillborn or worse? And I have seen this. To watch that child die a painful death, it's a sick question even to consider. We have to in our free state of Florida. If you can't control your body, you control nothing. But we're a pro-life state, right? Pro-life. We're so pro-life that we allow the permitless carry of the #1 killer of children and teens in this nation. the number one killer of our children and our state inexplicably makes it easier to access. So I'm going to ask you, how do you think this Florida of 2024 is going to be remembered in history? We have an authoritarian regime, bans books, bans courses, study controls and citizens against our will, and rolls back our civil rights to constituents. We're going to be universally reviled in time, and I thank you all so much, because I know you're going to do something to change this.
Dylan, you're up next.
I am a alum now. I can call myself from New College of Florida. New College was everything and more that you'll hear staff and faculty and alums speak of it. I grew up in Charlotte County, Florida, and to say it's not a bastion of progress would be a bit underselling it. I toured New College in 2019 before COVID, and I saw a community unlike anything I had ever experienced in my life beforehand. I saw people being able to be themselves in a Florida I didn't know exist. I was able to go and experience that community before the takeover, which is how we all describe it. And it's still like a fresh wound. It's hard to fully process it. I had the pleasure of being able to study political science and urban studies and have the tools to analyze such a takeover before me. It was, and still is, hard to fully process, but I can say that the people like myself who was looking for a new college now have no place to go. And the thing I fear for the sake of Florida is that the brain drain that will pursue from such a hostile takeover and such a public display of hostility towards progress, diversity, equity, inclusion is going to create an unprecedented issue that I don't feel the other side has fully seen through. I don't really know what full details of my experience are the most important to any of you, so I will yield my time to if any of y'all have questions about what it was like on the student end of things. Yes.
Thank you. Are you still a student at New College? Have you graduated? What are your plans in that realm?
So, fun story. I just recently graduated, just barely.
But you did.
I graduated, yes. I made it out. I attended the commencement ceremony, and me and a good number of other students had some differences with the school and how they ran things, and so we did not show up to commencements under any impression that commencement was going to be about us. So there was protests that ensued in the school. Even after I graduated, came after me and some other students. They withheld my transcript up until, well, today. And yes, I had plans on looking through grad schools. I thought I was going to be able to juggle my thesis and grad schools at once, but I decided to put it off until after graduating, and then I realized that I couldn't because the school wasn't done with me. Yeah, it was a matter of things that were said and done at commencement. I had the audacity to turn my back to some of the speakers. I had the audacity to boo some of the speakers rather than cheer, which didn't seem to bother them at all. And in return, I got my disciplinary hearing in the mail. Yes, and it was a long battle, but fortunately, things have seemed to have been worked out. But they've done everything to make sure that I leave with as little of my pride as I could have. But fortunately, yes, I have graduated, and I plan on going forward to pursue grad schools in urban planning, and I really hope to make my community elsewhere, but I guess I'm still window shopping for places.
Hi, my name is Betsy Braden. You might have seen me around town with Moms Demand Action and with the League of Women Voters. But today I would like to talk to you about the hostile takeover of New College. My son suffered from depression in high school. One day he was on the side of the Gandy Bridge contemplating jumping off for over an hour. It was heartbreaking to have a kid who was depressed and suicidal. Luckily he didn't jump. Later he realized he was trans. She started taking hormones and finished high school online. When she was looking for colleges, the counselor recommended New College, a small honors liberal arts school which was inclusive for everyone. It was a perfect fit. She met lots of friends and had wonderful professors. The school was 65% female and had a large population of LGBTQ students. There were neurodivergent students and other students with special needs that the school catered to. The students were brilliant. There were more Fulbright scholars here per capita than any other school in Florida. Then, January 6th, 2023 happened. The governor decided he wanted to make this public college a Hillsdale of the South. The governor was running for president, so this helped his anti-woke agenda. They fired the current president and installed an inexperienced, incompetent Tallahassee politician, and paid him 4 times the salary. They installed their own board of trustees that were from Hillsdale and the Heritage Foundation, who's Project 2025. And all the trustees were from out of state, most of them. They eliminated DEI and gender studies. They denied tenure to 7 faculty members. 1/3 of the faculty left. My daughter and 60 others transferred to Hampshire College in Massachusetts. The administrators thought that they were getting rid of the woke faculty, but many of the STEM professors left. The administrators recruited 75 baseball players, but even the University of Florida only has 35. The school doesn't have a baseball field. They gave scholarships of $10,000 apiece to these new student athletes and gave them the best dormitories and kicked the current students out of the dormitories and put them in hotels. The administration accepted subpar students with low SATs who didn't have to complete a college essay to be accepted. The administration gave bonuses for recruiting students to the admission department, which is a violation for accepting federal student loans. The students that left, like my daughter, missed their gem by the bay. They feel cheated. The ones that stayed feel threatened, as you just heard from that one student. They can't complain about anything for fear of being expelled. Many changed majors because the courses they needed no longer are taught. The college is just a big grift with no experienced administrators. Meanwhile, they are helping themselves to the New College Foundation's assets. Why aren't the taxpayers complaining? Recently, the president bulldozed 100 trees that were on a preserve on the bay. Some of them were oaks that were over 200 years old. The city tried to stop him but couldn't. He said he had to destroy the land to improve it. He had to put a volleyball court in.
Oh my God.
This is a metaphor for what he is doing to New College now. And then I'd like to switch hats to Moms Demand Action. I've had several people call me about if there's anything that you can do to stop the ammo in the vending machines at the grocery stores. It's already in 3 states right now, and they're selling ammo in grocery stores. And somebody said, oh, it could be in Florida by December. I'm like, oh God, and what can you do? What can you do? And you have to know with these vending machines, they said, oh, we can scan the person so we know it has AI and they know that is the person, but it doesn't check for felonies or red flag laws. So it's very scary. So if you could look into that.
We had kind of some security breaches, some issues with flights a couple days ago. Imagine something like that going wrong with a vending machine for ammunition.
Right.
Yeah. We will definitely not stand for that.
So thank you for coming. You have said a whole lot, but and not to any fault of your own. You just said a whole lot. I want to ask you a question. The 60 students that you indicated transferred to Hampshire College. Did Hampshire College like offer like scholarships?
Yeah, we got scholarships.
Okay,
Yeah.
so they kind of was like this could be your safe haven away from.
Right,
Gotcha.
but it's not the same. Like the kids are from Florida, and they're not used to the winters up there.
Yes.
Also, my daughter doesn't like it there that much. She loved New College. She doesn't like it that much, and I'm like, you gotta finish. And there's some kids that left. It's a nice school, but it's not New College. That's all.
Good evening. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here this evening. I'm Noreen Dollard. I'm a Senior Policy Analyst and focused on education and early learning, as well as Florida's Kids Count Director at the Florida Policy Institute. We're a multi-issue, non-partisan nonprofit agency that works to ensure economic prosperity and opportunity for all Floridians. I'm here to speak on 3 topics tonight for Florida's children: education, healthcare, and hunger. As you know, 2023's HB1 made school vouchers available to all Florida families, regardless of income. Last week, Step Up for Students announced awards for this year, this coming school year in a few weeks, and over 460,000 awards have been made. And last year, I spent time, much more generous time now than in committee last year, talking about the cost to our state. In our budget right now, there's $2.8 billion from the Florida Education Finance Program, and there's an additional $1.1 billion in the Florida tax credit allocated. There's money in the back of the bill for this year, as well as carry forward from the previous year. So there's substantial, more than $4 billion available for vouchers this coming year. And that's an incredible amount of our education budget, our expenditures. With all these funds that are allocated to the vouchers, there's still virtually no accountability or transparency for voucher expenditures. At the macro level, the Department of Education's publication of data, particularly with respect to the tax credit voucher data, they stopped publishing those data a year ago. So those numbers are probably out there, but they're very hard to find. These data are not transparent to the average taxpayer. There are 2,000 private schools that take vouchers in this state. Only 31% of them have any accreditation whatsoever. So questions remain as to the voucher expenditures, as these data are not published. What are tax dollars being used for exactly? Last summer, there were reports of funds being sent on kayaks, Disney tickets, and Legos. What are these educational savings account funds being spent on? And are those appropriate uses of taxpayer dollars? We just don't know because the data aren't there. So I would ask that you please thank you for work on vouchers, to push back on vouchers, but also please continue to push for accountability and transparency in where those taxpayer dollars are going. I'd like to turn now to hunger. Our summer EBT program, which is federally funded food assistance for families, is a convenient way of reducing food insecurity among Florida's children, especially with those with limited access to transportation, to food distribution sites and food pantries. More than 2 million children in Florida are eligible for summer EBT or Sunbucks because of their participation in the school lunch program. The benefits of the summer EBT program far outstrip the costs. The federal government pays all of the program costs plus half of the administrative costs, which is estimated to amount to $13 million, which is very small in our budget of $116 billion for this year. not to mention our surplus of $16 billion. So I asked, Florida only has until August 15th of this year to request summer EBT for next year. We've already given up the opportunity for this summer. So anything that can be done to ask that the application be made, and when the budget amendments come from DCF, if they do get made, that you look upon them favorably in your legislative duties. We know that DCF is able to administer these programs because they did it during the pandemic with the pandemic EBT. And then finally, I turn to healthcare. Our children deserve access to healthcare. And thank you for your support of 2023's HB 121 that expanded KidCare, the state's children's health insurance program for families. Now up to 300% of the federal poverty level are able to access those dollars. This would enable more than 16,000 more children to get affordable health care. But as you also know, we have a waiver with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And there's currently a lawsuit brought by the state of Florida to ensure that kids can't get kicked off, so that kids are able to be disenrolled from CHIP for non-payment of premiums, which is in contrast to federal regulation. And so we ask that any support to have this lawsuit dismissed and ensure that our children are getting health care in an affordable manner be supported. Thank you.
I have things. Jesus. And it's not you, it's so enlightening what we hear when the people are able to speak, right? And what we learn when the people are able to speak. And so as you were speaking, you're educating us as well. The two things you mentioned, well, all the things that you mentioned, but two of the things that are like very firmly in my wheelhouse and working on is hunger and healthcare for kids. My aide Upton Fisher is right back there. If you could see him before you leave and give him your information, I would love to connect with you on that. So, and that's really for anybody. And I think all of our aides are around as well. So, but if you specifically could see him, I would love to connect with you and kind of talk through some things with you.
Oh my gosh, it is so delightful to be here tonight. Thank you so much. Again, my name is Jonathan Weber. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm the Florida Policy Director for the Southern Poverty Law Center and the SPLC Action Fund. The Southern Poverty Law Center was established in 1971 in Montgomery, Alabama. We're a nonprofit organization dedicated to realizing the promise of the civil rights movement, particularly for Black communities in the South who often face discriminatory policies and targeted violence by white supremacists. We work in partnership with communities of color to dismantle white supremacy, strengthen intersectional movements through transformative policies and initiatives, and advance the human rights of all people. The SPLC believes everyone in our country deserves to live free from discrimination, and the government must provide remedies and special interventions to protect communities that have been systematically marginalized. Anti-discrimination policies and programs like diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility are essential to ensuring that constitutional rights are enjoyed by all. So first, I really want to underscore how important these field hearings are to the people of Florida. It's challenging for working people and families to take the time to travel to the Florida's capital in Tallahassee. For Miami, it's about an 8-hour ride. It took me 5.5 hours to get here today just from Tallahassee. Possibly longer with traffic traveling from all over the state. There are costs for hotels, there's lost wages, there's childcare, and much more that goes into any trip to Tallahassee. However, geography isn't the only issue. House and Senate committee chairs often overpack agendas, leaving little to no time for public testimony on critical bills. Tallahassee regulars know the frustration of having to reduce their 2-minute remarks to 30 seconds or less, usually on the way up to the podium or on the spot. It's downright rude and undermines our entire system when it happens to those who traveled to the Capitol for one day only. This poor planning is not only annoying, but it's inappropriate, especially when regular Floridians, our neighbors, our friends, and our family who travel to Tallahassee to speak to their lawmakers about how a bill or a new policy will impact their lives. But it gets worse. Sometimes committee chairs pack the agendas so full of public testimony, so full that public testimony isn't allowed at all, leaving those who travel to the Capitol completely at a loss. This happens too often, and it's disheartening to see individuals leave the building feeling let down by their government or apathetic to our democracy. But what you are all doing here today is the antidote. And on behalf of every single Floridian that comes to Tallahassee and feels unheard, unimportant, or forgotten, thank you so much for allowing us to speak, and thank you for listening most of all. Despite significant strides over the past 60 years to address inequities and increase educational opportunities, progress has always been threatened and met with backlash. For many Floridians, recent years have seen a dramatic and tragic rise in legislative and executive attacks on our freedoms. Systematic racial discrimination against people of color, especially Black people, is ingrained in policies across every aspect of American life. Legal and policy barriers to voting, homeownership, education, and book bans, as you mentioned, and employment have long existed. Decisions like Brown v. Board of Education and the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 were significant milestones, but not enough to overcome the deeply entrenched patterns of segregation and discrimination. As a result, new programs and policies were incorporated to establish non-discrimination policies and expand opportunities. Over time, these policies evolved into include DEIA programs to eliminate disparities in opportunities. Opponents of civil rights have continued to misconstrue these laws to maintain inequalities and reverse progress. In Florida, this backlash is manifested in myriad ways, which you've heard already about and we hear more about after I'm done. We've seen legislation that would make it illegal for local governments to remove statues that glorify the Confederacy, though thankfully such bills have failed so far. We've also seen ongoing attacks on voting accessibility, making it harder for citizens to participate in their representative democracy. Starting with the legislature's botched implementation of the 2018 Restoration Rights Amendment, to the attacks on third-party voter registration organizations, to the formation of the so-called Office of Election Crimes and Security. Participating in our democracy has become a minefield. I believe there is nothing more important than a citizen's right to vote, and anything that gets in the way of that is an affront to our republic. The Harriet C. and Harriet V. Moore Florida Voting Rights Act, which you all co-sponsored, thank you so much, was a proud moment in trying to address some of these specific issues. I'm hopeful to advance that bill in the coming session and any other bills to help improve citizen access to the ballot box, and please create a database to help returning citizens vote. At the university and workforce level, DEIA programs remain vital tools to ensure equal opportunities to reduce harassment and prevent discrimination. Research proves and shows that the benefits of diverse interactions in education and employment settings. DEI staff and programs help Florida's institutions comply with civil rights laws, improve decision-making, and enhance the experience and success of individuals from historically underrepresented communities. Our country benefits when we celebrate and protect diversity through our laws and policies. To address discrimination, I encourage you all to continue leading on these issues, which you already do, and keep going. While the majority party may not offer much wiggle room, persistence, organizing, smart policy, and compassion can lead to significant progress. In Florida and the Deep South, the challenges may seem insurmountable, but today's hearing is a leap forward. The people of Florida are here to help, as you can see, even if not everyone can travel to Tallahassee during the legislative session. We're here to support you. Thank you all so much.
Jonathan, I'd just like to say that as we move forward, let's stop using the acronym and let's start calling out the word, because it's starting to sound like alphabet soup, and a lot of people don't know what DEI is. Mm-hmm. So we need to start calling it by its name. I think it'll have a much more impactful. It'll be much more impactful on people. So let's try and start using all of us. I've been trying to do better at it myself.
I think you're 100% right. We all should do that.
Yes.
Because we can do that. Because DEI has now become the new N-word when they talk about the DEI vice president. Right. So, and it may say did earn it. I don't know all those things, but we don't call a thing a thing. Right. Sorry,
Thank you, John.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Jonathan,
having
we
me
appreciate
here.
you, Fred.
Genesis, you're up next.
Thank you. Good evening, members. It's so good to be with you all today, and I thank you for the opportunity to address you all today. My name is Genesis Robinson. I am the Interim Executive Director of Equal Ground Education Fund and Equal Ground Action Fund. We are a Black-led voting rights organization working throughout the state of Florida to increase civic engagement. We do this primarily through voter education, strategic planning, as well as voter preparedness. And I'm here today to first and foremost thank you first for hosting this conversation in this space. As has been said by previous speakers, we recognize that oftentimes in Tallahassee we're limited in how we can approach and address you all on critical issues. So thank you for hosting this space. But also I want to thank you for the effort and the fight that you put forth in Tallahassee. I think it is not lost on your constituents the difficult task that you all have to operate in Tallahassee. And so although we are hopeful that we can get tons of legislation that improves our quality of life, we recognize the reality that you all exist in, and so we appreciate the great fight that you do. As a voting rights organization, we are deeply concerned with the attacks that we continue to see on our democracy in this state. After the 2020 election, it was said that Florida had the safest and most secure election in the history of our state. Yet what we saw in 3 legislative sessions following that is repeated attacks on our right to be able to vote. 2021, we saw Senate Bill 90, which dramatically changed the way that Floridians are able to vote by mail, despite so many of us choosing that as a preferred method in 2020. In 2022, we saw Senate Bill 524, a first of its kind creation of a police elections force that has intimidated voters of color and gone after some of the most marginalized groups here in our state. And then in 2023, we saw an attack on third-party voter rights registration organizations, organizations that do the critical work of ensuring that Black and brown people are brought into our democratic process. And we know the data shows that Black and brown people are 5 times more likely to register to vote through engaging with a third-party voter registration organization. So we see and we recognize that attacks on these organizations is truly an attack on those communities. And so while our democracy is built on the principle that every vote matters, we find ourselves confronting the issues that disproportionately impact Black people in Florida, threatening the very foundation of equal representation. These repeated attacks have a major role in what we're seeing today. We're prepared to have an election here in Florida where at the beginning of 2023, 4.2 million Floridians were kicked off the vote by mail rolls and asked to sign up for another vote by mail ballot. That will have a tremendous impact on the upcoming election. Over 440,000 of them being from the community, people that look like me, who were once on the rolls and now have been removed. And because of the state providing data to let us know what progress we're making on getting back to that number, it's been incredibly difficult to organize in communities and really impress upon people the urgency of this reality. And so I just want to again thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for continuing to fight on behalf of folks in your state. And in closing, I'll say addressing these challenges requires comprehensive action